All right. So this is episode 1, scene number 2. So episode 1 is entitled The Awakening. Scene 2 is The Refusal. Now, just a little refresher, or if you are new here, what I'm doing essentially is I'm writing a scene of this film that is being produced that is this story of essentially the hero's journey, the life experience as told through my own interpretation, my own channeling, if you will. And so I am telling this in a way that is, it's kind of like a movie that you watch that's, they say, based on a true story, where it's relating to my life, but it's going to be more dramatized to, be entertaining and fun and engaging, because I recognize, people don't want to do boring shit. Like, what's wrong with that? People don't want to do boring shit, and that's cool. Although, to some people, what seems boring is actually fucking exhilarating and fun. But if you can create a game in a way in which everyone can find a sense of fun in it, even though that sense of fun may be entirely different for everyone, then we can all play this game of life. And so essentially the story is based upon my own journey through this game of life, even before I thought of ever calling it the game of life or thinking about it as a game. Essentially, like as episode 1 says, beginning with my own awakening process, and which in a sense reenacts or is an archetype, or is based upon the archetype of the hero's journey. And so as I'm telling the story, I'm also going through the different phases of the hero's journey, and I'm also doing it in a way that it can resonate on many different levels simultaneously. It's fractal. Again, like the shards of glass, meaning that each individual piece contains the whole. Okay? So I'm aligning it with all of my different teachings as well. And not even necessarily my teachings, but just natural laws of the universe that I have come to know for myself through this journey. And again, taking that and infusing it into the story. And then as I'm telling the story, I'm also living the story and creating the story in physical reality. And so it is also this example of the alchemical process of manifestation in practice. Okay? While at the same time in implementing all the different systems and things that I teach, and continuing to develop those things to actually play this actual game that we can physically play together, called the game of life, which then, as you will see, ultimately unfolds into this collective awakening and the birthing of a new world here, now, heaven, here, now, on earth. And so by telling this story and playing this game and creating it in a way that is entertaining, is engaging in, you know, what we perceive of as the Super Bowl or the Olympics, it's like, this is better in that way. Because as more and more people are drawn and invited into the process of their own awakening through the gamification of spiritual development, knowing the whole time that ultimately the structure will not hold and the structure cannot contain anymore what may be coming through, and therefore the structure must be built to transcend itself. And that is the story that is being lived out through me, at least. And I feel called to invite others to the story. And that's why I'm telling it as a story. And producing it, filming it in that way to provoke something at a core level that goes way deeper than just me saying a bunch of shit. Because I've already said the shit. Okay? And again, knowing that I knew that was only going to hit at one level, but now, again, every piece contains the whole. So now it's more and more of this, again, the symphony. It's like, how can we take these seemingly infinite number of pieces and create unity and wholeness and this masterpiece of a symphony that can be entitled God's way of knowing itself. Okay? And again, I'm new to all of this shit, and have been well aware that any kind of new endeavor, and again, this is part of the hero's journey, and this is kind of, what's leading into these scenes here. Part of the journey is to go through the process of gong fu, or a mastery of something. Is essentially that's your weapon, your mastery of whatever skill or craft or whatever, which essentially is like your genius. That is your weapon, or that is your tool. That is your structure. That is the banks of the river that helps you to transcend the tool, to recognize the power within yourself, which is the power of the entire universe, because you are the entire universe. You are the ocean in a drop, as Lao Tzu says. And therefore, that is the story of God's way to know itself. That we're all playing out on an individual level that is at the same time collective and all-encompassing whole. Okay? So part of that process of mastery is going through a phase of where you just suck. You just fucking suck ass, bro. And it's okay. Like, literally, when you start anything new, you're going to fucking suck. It's just when you're a kid, and you don't know any better to judge yourself so harshly and question possibility, you are open to exploring different things. I mean, hell, that's all kids do before they're just, conditioned to whatever the fuck that is going on these days. They explore. Kids explore. They ask questions. They're curious. Nothing is a set in stone scientific fact yet. Everything's open for question. Okay? And as we become conditioned through this current structure, which again, we've come a long fucking ways, bro. But still, recognizing the current limitations. But with the current structure, we get to a certain point where we start questioning ourselves, we start doubting ourselves, which is a natural process. But because the rest of society acts at also a certain level of questioning ourselves, doubting ourselves, not recognizing our power, not standing in our power, then we kind of assume this collective center of gravity at a certain level, which then, pulls people up to that level, but also can pull people down to that level. And that's what I was saying earlier with this, the dissonance, the disharmony between the different parts of yourself. Because you at an individual level also have your own center of gravity, your own thermostat that is currently set to a certain limit at this point. Okay? And so through the process of mastery, which involves you actually doing some shit that you enjoy, and that is the key there, doing things that you enjoy. You are supposed to, you are fucking meant to do things that you love to do. You are literally hardwired to do shit that you love to do. Why do you think we love eating so much? Why do you think we love fucking so much? Okay? And even why do you think we are drawn to different medicines, interacting with different compounds and things like that? So you're literally hardwired. But then you're made to believe that all those things are bad or sinful or not good for you or whatever the fuck. And then it's also like it's played into, it's just, again, it's a center of gravity. It's this perpetual thing. But when you do some shit you love to do, you're more willing to engage in the process of Gong Fu, the process of mastery, meaning you are more willing to just be okay with sucking at something, being really fucking bad and not even knowing if you're ever going to get better, but because you love to do the thing, you just keep doing the thing, even when it feels like you're going nowhere, or maybe even just getting worse. You just keep doing the thing. And that's literally all it takes. Okay? And again, that is in alignment with your genius. That is your tool that you develop in the hero's journey. That ultimately transcends itself. Okay? So, the awakening, the refusal. So, as part of this story, what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to share the story. And then I won't, I'll share the whole thing, which each scene is its own little mini story in the bigger story that is the episode of the bigger story that is the chapter or the season that is the bigger story of the book or the volume that is the bigger story of this, game of life, this collective thing that's going on. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the story, and then I'm going to just give my own interpretation. Because this, for me, this process of writing, can you see it? No, you can't. This process of writing is a practice of drawing out what is wanting to come through in the moment. And so this whole process, even going through this process of creating this, is this art of surrender and this healing journey and this expression of my highest potential, all in one thing. And so, it just takes a lot of vulnerability for me for this, that I'm kind of leaning into, continuing to lean into, and to be this at least version of myself that I'm being called to be, or the many different versions all at once, which is fun. Again, trust me, bro, I've questioned many times, like, am I just going fucking crazy here? Is this it? Am I losing? Am I losing it? Because, a little fun fact, I do have which again, I don't fucking care. I don't put weight into this shit, but just, I have a history of mental illness in my family. So yeah, it's like, am I going crazy, bro? But there's so much synchronicity and so much affirmation just every fucking where that, it's just unquestionable. It's just like this deep knowingness of like, all right, this is what's coming through. And part of it, along with the vulnerability, is like learning the true meaning of humility. And that meaning for me has been coming through as being humble enough to be all that I know that I am. Like being humble enough to be a fucking mega superstar. Being humble enough to be the fucking most influential person, like physical human being on this fucking planet. Because I know that I am nothing. And through my nothingness, everything emerges. Okay? That's why I'm the fucking king, bro. That's why I'm the fucking king. Episode 1. The Awakening. Scene 2. The Refusal. I can't wait to kick State's ass this weekend. I strategically blurted out as me and my boy Trayshawn walked past Martha Maynard. I finally convinced my parents to buy me a Letterman jacket so I could fit in with the rest of the football guys. Trayshawn and I just finished our morning workout and I was still loaded on the pre-pre, so your boy was feeling good. Bro, quit being a hoe and just get a number already. Fine. Let me show you how it's done. She was giving herself one last look over in the locker mirror like she always did before first period started. I walked straight up to her, dead ass. Hey, Martha. She closed her locker as she turned my way. There was the faintest grin followed by an obvious eye roll. What? She said in that halfway annoyed voice that sent me straight to Bonerville. Can I get your number? Ew, no. Okay. I could feel Trayshawn's amusement radiating from behind his puffed out, laugh-filled cheeks. I walked away before my boner had the chance to fully express itself. Another score for the home team? I murmured with a grin and a shrug as I dapped up Trayshawn and headed off to class. I was getting really good at pretending not to care. All right, how you like that? And scene. Ha! Okay. So, I'll just share, a few of my musings from that. And I realize it's kind of like this, spoiler alert kind of thing. But honestly, I'm doing this also in a way to allow for your own interpretation while at the same time still discovering my own. Because again, like this coming through is like, it literally is this me quieting myself and centering myself, setting an intention and just seeing what comes through. So it's like I'm learning as I'm going through this process. So that's why I said this is like my own kind of spiritual healing process or whatever the fuck you want to call it. And so I like to use the podcast in this means, like the writing for me is just drawing it out to see the essence of what's happening and set the intention. And then this podcast is a means for me to talk it out, to like just flesh it all out. And then the music, the soundscape that is accompanying the film helps me to then, in a sense, sound it out. Like, again, like touching on all of these different levels of communication to really touch at a deep level. And then I write, I take the soundscape, and then I write lyrics, and then I create a song around the scene. And I also use the intention and use the intention to create art relative to the scene, which then kind of acts as like cover art, just artistic work, creative graphic design type stuff, or really anything could be, just art, just creation. And then I use that as an ad. Again, this is like I'm experimenting shit. I don't know what all will work, what doesn't, but this is what I've come up with, and then I gotta fucking experiment, see what works and see what needs to be modified. But again, it's all fractal. It's all the pieces contain the whole, and that's really like a big intention for me through this whole process. And then I write copy for the ad that then funnels into the performance workshop, where it's like me actually enacting this scene and then discussing some of the lesson behind it. And then from there, that then invites people into this world, into Life Collective Nation, which then I can, know who is ready for more and invite them to, just a conversation, just open up dialogue, conversation, just seeking to understand and learn, what are your needs, how can we best support you, and then having all the tools available to help someone on the right path get started. And then ultimately, if it aligns, then invite them to the Optimal Athlete program, which is our 12-week like flagship program that gets you, designated as level 1 athlete of the game of life. It's a certification process. As at the same time you're you're learning all these different tools and creating this system and structure for your life. So then that essentially, that leads to the higher levels of the certification and ultimately to the master level, which, has the correlation in the game that is being played, while at the same time, because it's just the nature of this game that is being played, the master level is a true master and has that capacity as a master to, in a sense, be a leader in some way. And level 3 is a leader level, when the master even transcends that. It's more like, being a wise counsel, a wise elder, to continue to perpetuate, or not even necessarily perpetuate, but just to continue this experience, whatever may unfold of that. And that's kind of the wisdom of like being able to recognize patterns and in a sense see the future through recognizing the patterns. And in a sense, the future is already present, because past and present are all contained within, or past and future are all contained within the present. And ultimately, that, like for me, that's how I feel that I can be of the highest level of service, is helping someone along that path that I've created, which is really just me walking the path in this leading breadcrumbs along the way. Okay. and creating the path in a way that, in a sense, leads you to getting lost so that you can find your way home. So, in a sense, my job is to lead you deep, deep, deep into the forest, into the deep, dark forest of your own shadow, so that you can come to experience all of the different parts of you, so that you can ultimately find your own way home through the light of love. That's what I do. And that's just what we are doing as, like, that's the process of God knowing itself. That's the shards of glass. Okay, it's all here. And that's why it's coming through this story. So that is the path, and you can kind of see, how all these things are tied together. And for me, it's just I'm now finding this flow to where it's just one seamless process. Because again, that's where the structure comes in, because the more you can just optimize this process, in a sense, one, you accelerate your own growth at the tangible physical level. And more importantly, it opens you up. It creates more and more space to remain empty, to allow spirit to move through you. And that's what we're really seeking. Although through the seeking we recognize that the seeking is an obstacle in itself. But either way, that begins our journey. Through the seeking, you come to find your way home. Okay? So my interpretation of that scene there, so this is the awakening. This is kind of in relation to my own process, this first episode at kind of my when things really started shifting for me, which I would say was around middle of high school. And so this second scene, so this first scene was this dream that was, in a sense, this premonition of what is to come. And now the second scene takes you back to just normalcy, to just the kind of the standard status quo. It's like, okay, we're just in this ordinary world, doing ordinary things, living an ordinary life, which again is part of my story. And that's part of the hero's journey. You're nothing special. There's nothing special about you, bro. There's nothing special about you, bro. And that is why you're special. And so recognizing, like in this second scene, is and it really just not even knowing that I don't know. It's just showcasing just my current level of development at the time before the journey even begins, before there's the call to adventure. Then at the end of the scene, though, there's a slight little hint at this deep pain that is welling up inside, that I still haven't recognized yet, even though there's kind of showings of it. Like in this scene, my seeming face of lightheartedness and just not caring is actually a mask that I'm wearing to hide from my true feelings and identity. And at the same time, it is too a premonition of what is to come and how the shadow that may and how the shadow that may be developing also contains within it the seed of my greatest gift. Okay? So, in the scene, there's this initial rejection, which is, it's kind of this seed of the refusal of the call, except it's not through me refusing the call per se, even though there is a hint of I'm refusing to recognize these different parts of myself. And they just necessarily haven't surfaced into my awareness yet, even though they're deeply active at a subconscious level. And in a sense, that gets mirrored back to me, although I don't recognize it at this state. It gets mirrored back to me in the refusal of Martha Maynard to give me her number and, in a sense, establish this connection. It's like I wasn't in line with myself, so my ability to align with these different relationships, because of the way the intention that was seated behind them, which was ultimately this lack of self-love and this fear of, it's like the deep fear of rejection masked as this ability to laugh in the face of rejection. Okay? And so, again, like this, we're still in the very beginning here. We're just like establishing kind of the normal world before the hero ventures off. Okay? And I'm doing these week by week. So I still, I just wrote scene 1 yesterday as of this recording. And next week is scene 3. But honestly, I don't really know what that's going to be yet. I have again, like that's why I go through this process, and that's where in the curriculum, like if you take the free course, you do that list of, in the beginning, you do a list of all of the different possibilities for you. All the different things that you naturally like to include in your life that, just make you feel good, make you feel, healthier, or just are happy making for you, the four doctors. So you have all these different things, but obviously trying to do all these different things all at once, not really practical. And so that's why we go through the process of distilling to find the key processes. And then from the key processes, then we can paint the picture of your main character of this game that has these different capacities, that has these different gifts and talents, and that ultimately has these different key roles that it plays, these key expressions that it shows up as, even though within each one of these key expressions could be a myriad of different ways that it actually shows up through that expression. Like love can show up in many different ways. A king can show up in many different ways for many different circumstances. Okay? But it's just like the essence is there. But going through that process, you start to see how the different key processes are integrated, and then you can, in a sense, and this is what I'm learning right now as I'm going through this process, you can stitch in these other things that you had on your list, or maybe you didn't at the time, but as you start expanding your own capacity to dream of possibility expands, and therefore you allow yourself to, think as big as you want to think. And so you're able to stitch in these different things that maybe they didn't make the final cut per se of the key processes, but they're still like, for me, writing, for instance, was one of those things where I knew it wasn't the most important thing, where if I just did one thing, but I knew it was still, it's kind of like the different skills or the different, it's like each of the different life types is a different tool that you have, that you draw upon at different times, and you kind of have, certain tools. Maybe, there's like 3 or 4 or 5 tools that are like, these are my tools. Okay? And at first you use them for different situations, different things. But then you start realizing that, instead of building all these different things with these different tools, what if you just built one thing that you could use all the tools all together? And in building that one thing, it's, you're kind of called upon through each one of the tools to master subtle different techniques and styles with each one of those tools. Or even, like martial arts could be a tool, and there's many different techniques and styles and expressions of that tool. And so the writing was, in a sense, that one of those expressions that I was able to stitch back in as part of a process in itself, while at the same time being a skill development. And that's another key too. If there's certain things you want to get better at, just do them a lot. And you can do them in the way that they're not this separate thing. It's not like I'm going to take guitar lessons over on the side after I go to work. Fuck that. If I say, in this, you have to be very clear on what is important to you, bro. That's the key. Because, you can fill up your schedule, fill up your time, fill up your whole life with a bunch of meaningless shit. And if you look around, it's really easy to do. And we do it all the time. So you have to get really clear on, this is the most important shit. And that's why we go through the process and the key processes. This is the most important shit. Okay? And so if I wanted to take guitar lessons, it's like, I don't want to do this separate thing over here. Let me stitch this in as a skill that I feel really called to develop, because it's helping me to do the most important shit. And therefore, how can I just integrate the development in this skill in the underlying framework of the expression of the life types and the acting of the key processes? And that's why I kind of explain the writing for me takes like the essence, the intangible, and just steps it down so I can start working with it. Okay? And then the podcast, like speaking like this, and again, the writing is a skill that I want to develop. And then speaking is a skill I want to develop. And so I use this podcast as a way to then take, again, it's all stitched into this wider, just this underlying flow. Just, like a fucking conveyor belt. Just bloop, 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 bloop. Like every little piece goes in. You create a system around it. And then it's just like, fucking push the button, bro. And then at a certain point, you can create a way to not even have to push the button. It just knows when to go. And you just flow. Okay? And so the podcast is like, okay, I can take it even further and like really flesh it out. And just allow myself the freedom to just go wherever I go. Okay? And then by that time, it's like, now I'm starting to actually anchor this more and more into the physical reality. Like I said, there's this process of manifestation, this alchemy. And then by the time it's actually kind of like the final cut, I've already gone through all these iterations that have led me to like, this is it. Boom. Done. Okay? And then, even creating a flow around that. So I'm getting on this flow of like every 2 weeks, where it's like I, do certain things and that flows into the next week. And then at the end of the second week, it's like there's one full cycle. Even though everything happens each week, it's kind of a full 2-week cycle for the process. But I'm not going to get into that. I think we did it. I think we really did it today. And by we, I mean me. I fucking did it. I'm doing it. I am Dr. Nathan Christ. Pleasure. Just to show you that you are too. That's all. Love you, bro. Peace.